Well, happy Friday again, Stevens Falcons faculty and staff. Hope you guys are well. Hope you've had a good week, a productive week. Sorry for the delay in the messages. I said in my email we had a meeting as principals with Dr. Woods and some of his staff, kind of giving us the newest update. And obviously, he and the timing of his message was dictated by the governor's press conference today. So normally I try to get this out to you guys sooner, but I wanted to give you the most up to date information. As I'm sure all of you already know, we got the news today that I think most of us probably logically knew was coming, but had hoped would not come. Hope against hope that maybe there was a chance we could get back together with our kids and our teams and come back on campus and have some semblance of a normal end of a school year. But I do believe that the conscientious people listening to the advice of learned medical professionals came to the safe conclusion to end our school year in terms of us going into the building. But of course, for us to not end our school year regarding instruction. And so, what I want to say to you guys on that point is I want you to give yourself permission to not be okay with that, regardless of whether we felt like it was the inevitable or not. Hearing that today and knowing that that's a reality today is going to evoke a lot of emotions in different people. And we know it's going to evoke a lot of emotions in our students and our families. But right now, I'm talking specifically to you, and know that that this has been a stressful time to completely shift the way we do business with little to no warning. Has been hard. It's been difficult on different levels for different people. You're experiencing different things from home, and to have to confront the reality that we know that the 2019-2020 school year is going to finish in this stay home distance learning environment is hard for different people for a variety of reasons. And so I just want to say to take a moment, take the weekend, take some time, and let it be that it's okay that you're not okay with this. But that time has got to be brief because we know that we've got to re-engage with our students. Credits are on the line. Their future, the impact that's going to have on their future, the impact it's going to have on our ability to efficiently do business next year is on the line. And so take some time, kind of mourn the loss of the hope that we might be able to come back together face to face and then be ready to move forward. I'll have to tell you that in the Patel household, we've had to confront this in a unique way. In addition to being married to a teacher who's been stressed out at times and overwhelmed at times with trying to keep up with the new expectations for distance learning, I also have a daughter who's a senior. And so all of those fears and concerns and things confronting the reality of things that simply will not be experienced are starting to come home now. Before I progress to that, the message regarding events for seniors has not changed, but we'll look to get something out once I get more information from central office regarding scheduled events. We'll get that out as soon as possible to let them know. So I know you'll have some of them that are like right now getting on your Google Classroom and go, "What does this mean? What does this mean?" Right now, just say, "Hey, we're gonna get this all clarified, worked out regarding everything from." Canceled on-campus events, off-campus events, and including graduation, and what that's going to look like. So you just encourage them, say, "Look, stay tuned. You're going to get a message, and they'll let you know. We'll let them know as soon as possible." But nevertheless, for yourself, continue to use whatever resources you have to stay healthy. And as I said last week, I know how challenging that it can be to try to stay healthy when you're confronting being at home and caring for kids and family members. But find something. Go create a regular walk routine that you go on. That's what I do with me and my middle daughter. And we go and we talk, and it decompresses and takes away some of the burden of what's going on right now. In the midst of all this frustration and anxiety and stress, I have to remind myself of the things that I am thankful for. I am thankful that I'm an educator. That in the midst of this, I have the opportunity to continue to work, have the opportunity to continue to try to rise to a new occasion, a new challenge. But I still have a job. I still get paid. And so that's a good time to be in the education profession from that end. While it can be really hard to overcome all the new challenges, there are people in our communities. You have neighbors. I have neighbors that right now have either lost their jobs or had their income drastically cut back. Many of you actually probably have spouses that are experiencing that right now, or close family members. And so when I kind of get frustrated with everything that's going on and wanting to go back and wanting to bring kids back, I remind myself to be thankful, because there are people in my community, in my own neighborhood, that are not blessed to have a job they can do from home and are not continuing to get paid, don't still have, or at risk of losing medical benefits and things of that nature. I know there's a lot of questions, the implications of what this is going to be now that we've moved from a date and time when we might come back to knowing we're not going to come physically back on campus. There's a lot of questions that you guys have, and so we're going to answer them in due time. And so look for more information about specific things in the coming week, and then also my update next week. But because we just now got the final announcement, some of that stuff's going to have to be fleshed out. One particular thing I do want to go ahead and address, or two particular things I want to go ahead and address. One, if you have personal items on campus that you need, obviously, they'll be there whenever we come back together. But if there's something that you need, there's going to be a Google form that's going to be shared out. Obviously, we have to be very conscientious about how we do that to ensure that social distancing is going on, because that's not optional. And so look for a Google form, and we'll schedule a process to allow for that, especially for resources that you need to continue distance learning, as I know some of you do. Another little to-do list item to look forward to sounds like business as usual, and also falls into that feeling that I have about being thankful that I'm working a profession where I can still have a job. Look for an email about signing your contract that should come near the middle of May. They said second to third week in May. So be looking for that. Make sure you don't miss that in the midst of the hustle and bustle, and make sure that you do that digital signature for your contract. Not a ton of new information, but I want to reiterate a few things that we've talked about, and then some new information. In my message last week, I said the purpose of why the district is choosing to take grades and do a 6 weeks average in a report card this go around. And I said the reason why is to create a sense of urgency around one group of students, and those are the students who are simply not engaged in distance learning at all. That is the reason. And I clarified the point that a student that's engaged in distance learning should not receive a failing grade on this report card. That still is 100% true. However, through teacher questions, it's come clear that I need to lend some clarity to that. And so what I'm going to clarify is some of the confusion came around that district directive to put a Y in a grade book for a kid who has ever at any time engaged in Google Classroom for distance learning. And so some teachers are like, okay, so is that what Mr. Patel, is that what you're saying? That if a kid ever even once got on there, that they shouldn't be failing? I want to be clear. That's not what I'm talking about. A student who got on one time, back in middle of March, and maybe half completed one assignment or asked you a question, and you haven't heard from them now, and they haven't, you've got 5 assignments after the break and they've done one of them, that kid's going to end up with a failing grade in the report card. The ones that concern me is when I look in there and I see kids, and we've, as you guys probably know, as admin, we've been looking at grade books this week pretty intently. If we see a kid that looks like they've done, half or more of their assignments or majority of their assignments, and they're pretty regular, those are the ones that concern me. And I want to refocus on that ability. 2 things that came out that Mr. Mayer talked about, the ability to drop one of the 2 grades from a week. The also thing is the ability to substitute work that fell during that non-graded period in for the graded period, because those kiddos, if they're in there and they're in the game, then those are the ones we don't need to see failing. It's the ones that literally have we've never heard of them, or you heard them briefly and then they went MIA and you hadn't heard from them again. That we need to use hopefully get this to get them a sense of urgency when they see a grade in the grade book. They're like, hey, maybe this is real. We hope that will affect some of them. Want to remind everybody about the use of the 2 COVID codes when you get ready to do grade submission, and remind you that is not optional for any student with a grade below 70. So 100% of your students who have a grade below 70 have to have one of those 2 COVID codes attached on the comments for that student for your class. Have to have it. Many have asked the question, so I want to address it directly. Uh, Asking for recommendations or guidelines about what should I put in the grade book for a kid that's like done nothing. Maybe they did one assignment for the break, haven't heard from them since, or they had an 80 and a 0 on two assignments before the break, did one assignment, and then have five missing assignments for the rest of distance learning. What do I do with that kid? Well, what I can tell you is a lot of the same parameters. Remember, that kid's going to see that kid that goes MIA or we never hear from. That kid needs to see a failing grade in the grade book. But a lot of the other factors regarding what grade you choose to put in for that kid for their 6 weeks average are still the same factors that we encounter during the school year. A couple things I want to put in context. Reminder that students with an average below 60 cannot do credit retrieval. And so when you're looking at a kiddo and their average is dipping below a 60, we're removing a major option to try to get that kid recovered and get them back on track to graduate. And the reality is our credit retrieval program can only withstand so many students. And the last thing I want is for us to have to be in a triage situation with credit retrieval where kids who really need it are not allowed to go in there because the numbers are so vast. So keep that number in mind when you're looking at a kiddo that you feel like needs to have or should see a failing grade in the grade book is that 60 is a grade that you need to keep in mind. Many of you guys on your own already, when you look at a kid that has a bad 6 weeks, that you do that grade that gives hope, that doesn't make it statistically impossible for the kid to recover, either to get credit now or to qualify for credit retrieval. Many of you guys do that as a regular practice, and that's no different now. The reality is we already know, you heard me say at the beginning of the school year, for those of you in different conversations, I repeat this, the 100 point grade scale is already statistically invalid. It already over punishes a kid for one bad 6 weeks when you only have the top 10% leads to an A, the next 10% B, the next 10% C, and then the bottom 70% fall into the category of F. It already is a statistically invalid system. So I highly encourage you with those kiddos that have been either now showed up or MIA. Yes, they need to see a failing grade, but yes, statistically they need to have some hope. And then hopefully if we get on them and they see the reality, they'll re-engage and we can get them out of the gutter. The other thing with that too is we need to take this 6 weeks average with a long-term view as well when it comes to what do I put in for that kid that's completely MIA. The reality is that if a kid bombs out so much that they're going to they won't qualify for credit retrieval, we don't have space for credit retrieval, then you need to embrace the reality that they'll be walking back into your class next year. And so some of you need to think, okay, when I get ready to make that grade, and do I need to give them hope or, this, that, and the other is, how bad do you want to be teaching that kid again next year? And I don't say that as some kind of warning. It's reality. If we have kids that are bubble kids and then all of a sudden they get a 20 for a 6 weeks average that takes them out and removes any chance for them to get credit, then they're going to be back in the same classes next year. And so like I said, I just want you to have that information, have that in your mind as you determine what to do with those kiddos that we haven't seen from or saw briefly and they went missing. All right, enough on that. One other thing that I do want to talk about, though, about related to that grading piece is the star waiver piece. And I want to make sure everybody's aware that the waiver of star for first-time testers is contingent on the student passing the class for the year. So when we look at that idea of giving hope and giving kids a chance to dig it out and giving them time to come back to us if they've been missing and get out of the ditch, we need to also remember that a student that fails the class will become a retester. Based on what we're being told by TEA right now, that student will become a retester that we have to then create a plan to remediate, and that plan is going to be executed by you, the teacher. That has those students next year. So keep that in mind as you make decisions. Big announcement is to use Monday and Tuesday as a grade cleanup makeup period. Don't you can add new content to your Google Classroom if you're ready to do that, but don't add major assignments that have to be due by a certain time. We want to encourage students and teachers. Teachers work on getting your gradebook cleaned up. Students work on getting assignments turned in. They're going to get a call out from me reminding them that grades are going to be taken. So hopefully that'll light a fire and you'll get some more work. And I'll talk about some of them that just got devices distributed today. So yeah, make sure that we use Monday and Tuesday. Let's make sure your gradebook's cleaned up. Make sure we're communicating with kids, and kids are trying to get as much work as they can done before you guys have to submit those grades on Wednesday. And then re-engage with regular distance learning patterns on Wednesday. One thing I do want you to think about too is going back to those kids that are not present or barely present at all. Some of you guys have worked your rear ends off to get those bubble struggling kids to a place where they have a chance to get credit in your class, and then they've gone off the deep end or completely missing because they just can't handle the distance. They needed to come to school. They needed to see you. Do everything in your power to not let the hard work you've done with those kids be negated because a pandemic occurred and we were forced to close schools. Anything we can do to keep a kid alive, anything we can do to communicate with a kid, to give them a statistical chance to get credit in your class, let's do it. And you as a teacher and a practitioner, I trust that you will. One little piece of grade-related tech issues, I guess, is it's been brought to our attention that some teachers have clicked a setting in TAC that counts blanks as zeros. So if you see abnormally low averages for your class and you've left some of those assignments blank during the time that they're supposed to be left blank early, before the break and all that kind of stuff like that, please make sure that setting you've checked that setting. The question's been asked a lot about those assignments that occurred before the week before the break and what it means to, don't let those assignments not hurt students. Let me be clear. That's exactly what it means. Any grade that was in the grade book, if it causes the student's average to go up, leave it in. If it causes the student's average to go down, drop it. It's that simple, that clear. The reason for that is because if we were back in school like normal, those kids would have had time to easily demonstrate a higher level mastery, and that's been taken away. And the immediate time after the break, we didn't have school. Then we spent a whole week of all of us trying to figure out distance learning. So please, that simple. You look at the kid's average. If the grade helps cause the average to go up, you leave it in. If the grade for that week before the spring break helps the kid's grade or hurts the kid's grade, drop it. One thing I can't reiterate enough, and this is just good teaching practice, although from time to time we're confronted that not everybody does this, is before you submit your grades on Wednesday, at the end of the day on Wednesday, you need to go kid by kid by kid, and you need to evaluate every student and determine, is this what I believe the right reflection is of their grade? I know it's a lot, guys. I know you got a lot on your plate, but it's so important that you do a kid by kid approach. You can't just type numbers into the grade book and then click submit and then be shocked when kids end up in dire circumstances or your failure rate is not what you thought it would be. One thing I want to make available to you guys is that Mr. Mayer is going to be available on Monday. Look for a message from him. He's going to be available on Monday to do Google Hangouts with individual teachers who have grading related questions. So if you're like, Mr. Perdell didn't answer this particular precise thing, he'll let you know the times on Monday. He's just going to get on to Google. You can get on to Hangouts and you can message him and you guys can video chat. Because I know for sure a lot of times it's hard to get questions answered when you can't have a back and forth conversational situation. And so Mr. Mayer is going to let you guys know when he'll be available for that. Make sure you carefully read Mary Galvan's instructions about grade reporting. If you have questions about that, you can communicate with her directly. Another thing to be on the lookout for is the district is talking about sometime soon putting a weekly Y in the grade book as opposed to that one Y, and that'll help us track the kids who not only have never been there, but the kids who have connected and then have gone MIA. We know that there are some students, and teachers have already reported this, so thank you guys, who initially were engaged. We were on the classroom. They turned in some assignments, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, it all stopped. We don't know what's going on with that kid, but that'll allow us to reach out to them and communicate. Or if they're connected in a different class, maybe we can communicate with that teacher to get that kid on there. Because what is a very real reality is a kid's able to get on because their home circumstances are one thing at the beginning, but then parent loses job, income, maybe they're forced to move out, move in with relatives, and it changes that ability. So we need to be on the lookout for that weekly why. I think that grade column is going to show up, but I'll give you more when we know for sure about that. Cannot thank you guys enough for communicating about kids who still need devices. At last check, right now as I'm recording this video, Alana, Mr. Haverda, Mr. Lasco are all up at campus giving out devices. Last check, we had over 30 students who did not have devices but were planning to come up to Stevens, scheduled to come up to Stevens to get those devices. That would not have happened without it being a collective communication process. So I thank you guys for that. That's about it for now. That's a lot. Hope you guys have a great weekend. And then dig in, make sure those kids get those grades caught up at the beginning, Monday and Tuesday next week. As we get new information, more information about specific things, we will message that out to you. If it needs to be messaged out sooner in the week, we'll do it. If not, we'll wait till the weekly message. You guys have a great weekend.